Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock right here on Awesemo.com. Of course, I am Jason. As always on Friday, I am joined by Geoff and Terry. How you doing, fellas?
Doing good. Nice, easy Friday so far. Looking forward to getting into the slate with you guys here. That was a jazzy little intro we had, too. I like that.
Yeah, new music. I guess the last regular season slate anyways for us, so on a Friday.
Yeah, I'm over here hosting, producing. So Jordan needed the night off, so a little bit of both here as I'm redoing my home studio as well. So it's it's a little busy time for me today, man. But obviously a ton to break in. But Terry, before we get going here, I know you want to talk right about the early slate that's about to kick off.
Yeah, just so we can get it out there for people. You got about 3 minutes to change your lineups, but that Mets-Nationals game looks like it's scratched, I think, for weather. So get those guys out of your lineups if you got them in. That was really it. That was the only important news off the top. So,
one of the things we talked about on the strategy show this morning, fellas, was with this being the last weekend of the regular season, is paying attention to what managers are saying about their pitchers, whether they're going to go a full slate. Terry, last night when we did the early bird show, we were talking a lot about Lamet, but we're not getting a Lamet here today.
Right, yeah, no Lamet, unfortunately. It looks like from what I can see, he bumped to the second game. So I don't know if that's out there in some weird, funky little late 4-game slate or something like that. But you can grab him there. I don't think that we're going to see the same upside out of Paddock. He's kind of struggled through the year, and I don't know that he's going to get to that 7-inning complete game that we were talking about with Lamet in the shortened game. So I think the upside comes off of that spot a little bit with the pitching change.
Yeah, I see. I mean, Paddock seems to be in play for a lot of people tonight, but since we brought him up right off the bat, I kind of agree. I mean, it's not the greatest spot against San Francisco. Is obviously playing a lot better of late. Like the pitcher for San Diego, a lot better when it was Lamet, but I feel like Paddock is going to be one of those dudes that's kind of consequential to the slate tonight and how that goes. I think a lot of people see him as one of the better pay down values, but I don't think that's the only way you have to go on this one. So definitely should be interesting how that works out.
As you look at the pitching, because the first 20 minutes of the show we dedicate to pitching, then the next 20 minutes we'll go over to stacks, and the final half of the show, we will take your questions. So line those up right there on YouTube, also in our premium Slack account as well. Obviously, we got you Darvish at the top of the slate, 10,800 on DK. He's 11-2 on FanDuel, $56 on Yahoo. Carrasco, 10,400, 10,800 on FanDuel, $47 on Yahoo. Clayton Kershaw, 10,000 on DraftKings, 9,700 on FanDuel, $51 on Yahoo. That's, Terry, we talked about him last night of, is it going to be a situation like last night with Buehler where he only goes 4 innings, and then at $10,000, do you want to take that chance?
Yeah, so that's the one tricky spot. I haven't seen anything concrete on it where they said, hey, we're only giving him 3 innings till we get him a little bit of a workout before we go into the playoffs. But they're locked and loaded for their playoff spot, I believe. And it's a pitcher who's precious to their chances. It's a pitcher who's precious to them, has had his wonky injuries in the past. They tend to coddle Buehler a little bit more just because he's a kid and, it's management of a upside arm. But I wouldn't be totally shocked to see something like that with Kershaw. Might be after 5 innings instead of 4, but there is the potential that his upside is capped today by something like that. Do still like him overall, and it doesn't look like that's really diminished him very much in Alex's eyes. He's 3rd overall on the board, so I think we can get to him, but that would just be the one word of warning with it. If you're dead even and you need a reason to go to the other guy, that would be it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely something you have to think about. I mean, there is a little bit of increased risk. I can't disagree. I still kind of like the upside spot for GPP. He's got a good K rate against, right-handed hitters. And I think a lot of people will probably be looking at that tonight. And you get really big ownership on Darvish. So coming off him and kind of a tough matchup against the White Sox, I kind of get it, to be honest. I would have way more interest, or I would probably be way more invested in this call going Kershaw and for overweight if we didn't have to worry about the playoff thing coming up and maybe there wasn't a chance of a rest. But I still think it's a pretty good spot. I'm not that concerned about it. We haven't heard any news. I don't think he's going to be super limited or anything. So he's pitched pretty well. I know the people like to point out that the K rate, his K rate isn't even that bad. I mean, we've seen, obviously he's throwing in 11 Ks as his upside, 9 Ks as his upside. So I still think this is a really good spot for him, for Kershaw. Again, I wouldn't be as invested to go super overweight in him just because of that. You obviously have to think about the dynamics of what's in play tonight, but I still think it's a good spot. I think it's a good slate to take a shot with him. So.
Yeah, and like you said, we didn't hear anything concrete. So that's what we're doing there, is essentially hunting for a reason to not play Clay Kershaw, which might be a mistake. I mean, this is Clay Kershaw that we're talking about. You mentioned he's pitching well. Swinging strikes are right at 29.2%. So he's right there with his swinging strikes, only walking 4% of guys. I'm sorry, it's 29.2% strikeout rate, 12.7% swinging strikes. 29 would be absurd. 54.1% ground ball rate too, which is up from 47 to 48% over the last few years. So he's kind of got his stuff back from where he was diminished over the last couple of years. The Angels are pretty decent against lefties, but it's Clay Kershaw. So I think, he overcomes the spot, and we're hunting for reasons to not play him if we're talking about him being limited. So I agree with you.
By the way, loving all the comments in the section about only one of us having a backwards hat on. Terry, one of the people, said that Colin Cowherd would be a big fan of yours if anyone has seen that clip that's going online. And I gotta support the hair while I got it. I got my family's got a lot of baldness in them, so I gotta support the hair while I got it. But yeah, I will. We always joke on the MMA show, when I put the backwards red hat on, it's getting serious. So, but it does happen. It does happen. When you
won't
look
be
at
meeting with any CEOs, in my near future. So.
Yeah, so sometimes
backwards hat.
And there's a reason that the hat is up here. That's the hair up top is maybe not quite so robust as what's going on in the back these days, and that's just a product of COVID and needing a haircut desperately. None of this is intentional.
Yeah, I definitely I got to get to a bar about every couple of weeks, otherwise it gets a little shaggy in the back. But as you guys evaluate the top three pitching options here, Darvish, Carrasco, Kershaw, is there a clear number one, or is it 1A, 1B, 2?
I think with Darvish's K rate and just what he's done on the year, I think you have to put him at number one. It sounds a little weird because the matchup is so much better for Carrasco, but I think if you're just looking at a pure upside spot, and I think this kind of bears out from what we see in Alex's model today. Darvish with the best, the best top pitching percentage. It looks like on the output. I think I'm looking at that correctly. I have like 3 different windows open, but again, you just look at Darvish from what he's done from a K rate and perspective and all things like that. And look, the White Sox have a ton of power. They're a dangerous team, but they still strike out at an okay clip at least. So I personally think I know Carrasco's pitched better. I really like the spot for him. You really need one from a cash game lineup. I'd probably take Carrasco, but from a pure upside, the number one has to be Darvish for me too. I can't really find a good enough reason to say that he doesn't have the most upside here.
Yeah, ceiling score upside for sure is Darvish. I think he could put up a nice strikeout game. You mentioned the White Sox are an incredible lineup, but overall 13th in baseball in the split with a 178 ISO. So they're coming down to around the league average as far as the power and driving the ball goes in the split. 107 WRC plus, still excellent at creating runs, above average there, but a 26.1% strikeout rate. So there are definitely strikeouts for you, Darvish. He's striking out guys at a 32.4% clip overall. That's up from the last few years. And what I really love is he's cut his walks from 11.7 2 years ago to 7.7 last year to just 4.8 this year. So he's keeping guys off base. So even if one of these guys does get on top of that cutter or something and driver for power, it's most likely going to come without men on base. So it'll be a 1-run, maybe a 2-run homer, and then we don't have to worry about it, and he'll still rack up strikeouts. So I really like the spot for Darvish. I'm in love with the matchup for Carrasco. I think it's fantastic against that Pirates team for sure, and he's definitely my number 2. But I agree with Geoff that Darvish is the clear number 1, and it's all about those strikeouts and that strikeout upside.
Now, when it comes to value pitchers tonight, of course, Terry, we both talked about Kikuchi last night. Me and Greg talked about him earlier today. Obviously, on DK at 6,400, going to be someone that potentially people are going to pivot to. But as you look at the, outside the under 9K pitchers on DraftKings, who is the value pitchers that you like tonight? Geoff, we'll start with you, man.
Oh, so for under 9K, I mean, I think there's a couple different ways you can go. I mean, we mentioned Paddock off the start. I'm not convinced that it's the greatest upside spot for him, but I mean, he's definitely in play. I think going down, I mean, the two, I really think you go cheap tonight. I think you either go Kikuchi or you go Mitch Keller. I really think Mitch Keller's in play. I mean, I know it's a complete boom or bust spot. Obviously, you guys don't need me to probably tell you that, but just looking at some of the tools that Alex has out tonight, I mean, it's projecting okay. I mean, just in terms of upside and what he can produce for just his ownership, right? I mean, he's projecting at like no ownership, but his percentage of being in like the top 2 pitchers kind of thing it's higher than quite a few players, ranked a lot above him on the slate. So I kind of like this for Mitch Keller. It's a completely insanely risky spot. I get it, but again, I'm talking about upside and who value is. I think you got to put him out there. I know Kikuchi's got similar stuff, but I think the matchup might actually be worse for him against Oakland. Some dangerous right-handed hitters there. Obviously, it's not a great matchup against Cleveland either, but I just kind of like Keller's, low ownership for GPPs. I kind of like the upside he brings. The Urquidy is probably from Houston is probably the real value guy that I think most people drift to, and I can't remember his ownership, but he's probably going to be like the popular play around 7K. I think for GPPs, building around those cheaper guys will give you similar upside though, if they hit. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at this for value.
So that I like Mitch Keller, so he stole my Mitch Keller take. So I'm gonna have to go to the other Keller. And
feel free to I like it.
Again, Geoff. So yeah, I actually I like both Kellers on this slate. The other Keller, Brad, is only 7,400. Does not have the strikeout upside that Mitch possesses, and is getting some ownership attention. So he would be a little bit less on the board for me than Mitch at a better price. What I consider more strikeout upside and going essentially untouched. Nobody's going to Mitch Keller here. So I really like the upside there. But Brad, very, very good at limiting runs, keeping the ball in the yard. The strikeouts are really the only issue with that guy. If he could put together a few extra strikeouts, he could have a very nice start for us. And if there's a team he's going to be able to do it against, it's these Detroit Tigers. They're worst in the league strikeouts against right-handed pitching. So there's a chance he could have a sneaky upside start here. And then taking a look at the top starters board, the other guy that was just jumping out to me a little bit was Tyler Mahle. Tyler Mahle is only 8,300. I think your parameters were under 9, so I think I'm safe there. I like getting him. It's a dangerous lineup in Minnesota, but he's really made some dynamic adjustments to his stuff this year, and it's been turning in tremendous results all year long. He took his strikeout rate from a 23% career rate all the way to 29.6 this year. He's walking 10% of hitters still, but that's all right. The change that he made was adding a bunch of spin to his fastball, which changed up the mix of all his pitches completely, sets up his splitter, sets up his slider, and it just makes him a totally different pitcher. 13.8% swinging strikes this year, 20% soft contact, just 29.1% hard contact. The challenge is the Twins are 4th in baseball with a 217 ISO, 109 WRC plus, but they do strike out 25.4% of the time. So I think there's some Ks there. I think he can maybe limit the upside and give us a good start, again, at very, very sneaky ownership.
Yeah. Alex's projections looks like they actually really like Mahle too.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like just stacking against them, but mainly the lefties there against Minnesota. But he is a good pitcher, so I see both sides of that argument. I just figure if it's kind of a dangerous spot, why not just pay down? But I could see Mahle having a good game tonight at the same time. So.
Yeah, by the way, our MLB Ownership Projections is our free premium MLB content today. So go over to Awesemo.com. You can check out those ownership projections. Tyler, 7.8% on DraftKings is what we got here right now. You mentioned about Brad Kelleher, 16.6%. If you want to go with that Kelleher and Kelleher duo here, by the way, there is 2 Kellehers on this slate, so that is something to think about here. But as I mentioned, go to Awesemo.com. MLB Ownership Projections are free today, and if you do want to sign up for Awesemo Plus MLB Weekly Pass, you can do that right there on the homepage. Click the Awesemo Plus. Sign up for $15.95, get you access all week for the top pitchers tool, top stack tool, ownership projections, player projections, and so much more. You got to check that out over at awesemo.com. Those are our tools that we use every day. You hear Geoff talking about, looking at Alex's projections of what he's got here. Guys, as you look at the ownership projections in terms of pitching, Is there something that surprised you?
Taking a look. I was expecting Berrios to be a little bit more popular on DraftKings just since he's the kind of big name brand recognition in that next tier of pricing at 92. He's the next step down from those 10K guys. So I was expecting with the 800 gap between him and Kershaw that he'd be drawing a little bit more. I don't love the spot for him. I actually wrote up the other side. I wrote up Cincinnati today as a kind of a sneaky stack. And the reason I chose them as a stack, they were drawing a little bit more ownership than their probability of success, but they were by far, to me, the best potential to produce as far as a value stack. They've got a lot of cheap bats in that lineup today. So I was getting to more of that, but I definitely think at only 9.3% ownership on DK, there's probably a good opportunity there with Berrios. He's trending toward a better probability of success as of my last update than that. So I think we can get to Berrios a little bit more than I was thinking earlier in the day. So that was the one that really jumped out to me.
Yeah, there's nothing super crazy that jumps out to me. I mean, maybe Paddock, just because, again, I mean, I understand like the ownership's up on Bassett there. That makes sense. I mean, it's really good. It's Seattle, right? Paddock though is $1,000 more, and his ownership it's projecting almost the same. So as Bassett, I think that one just being up there as much as it is, probably a little bit surprising, especially because there are, like we already mentioned, I mean, a couple cheap pitchers who are definitely in play. So that was the only one that kind of jumped out, I think.
What do you guys mind if I throw one out before we move on?
Go.
What do you think? What do we think of Andrew Heaney, where Alex has him ranked? He's the 5th starter on the DK tool, going up against the Dodgers. Tricky spot, not drawing a lot of ownership, drawing a much bigger probability of being the top 2 than his ownership, closing in on double. And he's right there, Berrios, in the same kind of a sense. Just maybe, putting those 2 guys together, or just what do we think of Heaney in that spot, Geoff? Because I wasn't getting Heaney projected like that, so that surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, it'd probably be an okay leverage spot too. I mean, I don't think the Dodgers are going to be like super popular, but they'll garner some ownership, and I think no one's going to use Heaney, right? So it's not like you have to go crazy overweight on him or anything. I mean, the K rate is pretty good, so there's definitely some validity to it. It's just, he's obviously going up against the Dodgers, so I can kind of get behind it, to be honest. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of pitchers like that where, maybe the spot isn't good, or maybe they've just been a little bit too wild, in some of their starts. But, the upside is there for a lot of these guys. I think Heaney definitely belongs in that conversation. So, you probably put him up with Mahle. He's a better pitcher than those 6K guys. So, if he does pitch well, he can probably overcome the matchup. I can understand it for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different options, and maybe it's just getting like a little bit too fancy is the only thing I'd say, because, we have 3 pretty good options at the top. Mm-hmm. And again, if you mix and match those 3, you can kind of mix them in with cheaper dudes as well with similar upside, I guess I'd say. And I'm not sure how much leverage you're going to get on the Dodgers. Dodgers will be popular, but they're not they're projecting out as kind of a middle-ish stack in terms of, actually maybe even a little bit lower than middle-ish. So yeah, I get it. Like it's up there. It could happen. He's got a really good K rate, looks like. So just not sure if again, it depends on what your exposure is on this slate and stuff like that. It's definitely someone I would mix in if I was like maxing out the slate or something, but.
Yeah, and it's interesting if you look into the Dodgers against a lefty, which is another reason I asked. They kind of have struggled this year a little bit, but then if you back it up to the start of last year, they bounced back. Going to the start of last year, they're 6th in baseball with a 198 ISO, with a 106 WRC plus, only 21.8% strikeout rate. This year, they're 18th in baseball with a 169, still a 105 WRC plus. So it's not like they're awful by any means, but they definitely come down a little bit. And then when I was writing them up, just poking around, Mookie is interesting against lefties. This year, 61 plate appearances, very small sample. He's only got a .019 ISO with a WRC plus 54% below average and a 189, 295, 208 slash and a 24.6% strikeout rate. If you go back to the beginning of last year, over 258 lefty samples, he's at 251, 360, 397 with a 146 ISO, 1% below average WRC plus. But then if you look at his whole career, 213 ISO, WRC plus 33% above average. So that's the real Mookie Betts. I think he's been in like a little 18-month slump against lefties. I think there's plenty there for Mookie, but it's just an example of how this team is a little bit wonky and a little bit weird against lefties this year.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Dodgers lineup. I mean, it's your typical Dodgers lineup. The only really change you really see, Austin Barnes will be at catcher tonight. He's hitting ninth, but Enrique Hernandez is playing second, batting eighth. But you look at the rest of the lineup, it's your typical Dodgers lineup. So it's not, it's not like they're resting guys to get them ready for the playoffs. So it's definitely a risk, but it's an interesting risk though.
Yeah, and I think you can take shots with Heaney there, and especially it looks like Alex definitely thinks that. So I think I can work some of him into my life, and then I think definitely the Dodgers on the other side. Geoff mentioned some of the popular guys are drawing the ownership you would expect, but some of the other guys are certainly not. And two of my favorite targets in that lineup are drawing essentially nothing on DraftKings, which is astounding. Cody Bellinger and AJ Pollock hitting 6 and 7, so you're sacrificing a plate appearance, but they're both under 1% ownership, and they're both at high but reasonable salaries. So I wrote up a stack that I loved with this Dodgers team. I had Chris Taylor in it, but you can easily swap to Enrique Hernandez. I like Taylor better in the spot, but Enrique's fine. And like I wrote in the column, it's the least analytical thing I'll say all year, but wouldn't it be exactly like Enrique Hernandez to break a slate on us just at the very end of the season? So he's in my stack now in that spot. So I think we can do good things with both sides of this one.
Yeah, we'll move over to the stack side of it now. Looking at ownership that we're getting, we're seeing some great ownership coming out of the Astros and the Cubbies. I guess first off, let's talk those two teams. What's your thoughts on both those teams as a stack tonight? I want to say, I know what we talked about on the strategy show this morning, me and Greg, about that Cubs stack, and primarily because of what the salaries were, especially on DK for the Cubbies.
Yeah, so for the Cubs, I mean, obviously you have, a little bit. It looks like the wind is blowing out tonight, so that's something to think about. But it's not enough to just sit here and say, oh, you just not target this game. In my opinion, I mean, going up against Dylan Cease, I mean, I think you look at he's a dude. I mean, I was looking at his stats. I mean, he walks a lot of batters. I mean, his strikeout rate isn't great. He doesn't really have like a great ground ball rate either. So you're kind of wondering, I mean, is this dude due to just get like smashed at some point soon? Especially with a pitcher with control issues. I kind of like the Cubs. I mean, I don't think it's a spot where, you go crazy or anything like that. But I mean, you could definitely target a couple dudes in a mini stack. I mean, probably would start with Rizzo. I mean, Haywood. I mean, I don't mind it. It's not one of the stacks like a have to have tonight or something like that. But I think that the matchup is really good, and it's kind of something that if the wind wasn't a factor, or maybe we just had a bit of a different looking slate. I mean, I think I'd be much more all over this. But I definitely feel like you just the way the Cubs lineup sets out too. I mean, you have three lefties there. 2 to 6. You could definitely build around that. Like I said, the Rizzo Hayward is really cheap too. So you could start lineups with this with like a 3-man or even 5-man, and then just fill it out with 3 expensive players. I think they're in play. I mean, the weather is a bit of a factor, but I think when you have a sort of a pitcher with control issues like Cease, definitely in play for a big game from the Cubs hitters.
Yeah, Cease walking too many guys, not striking out guys enough. Pitcher whose stuff I absolutely love. I think he's going to be a good pitcher. He's not going to be a good pitcher by this evening, as we like to talk about. So I think we could definitely get to him. He's pitched to a 5.94 xFIP to his 3.52 ERA, so he's gotten pretty lucky to have the numbers that he has. Kind of what Geoff was speaking to. He's kind of do is the wrong word, but there's under the cover numbers to support that he's in a little bit of trouble here. So can definitely get on board with that Cubs stack. I think you hit some of the guys on the head there. Love the idea of Jason Hayward batting fourth there, not getting much ownership in the cleanup spot. People have been going away from Javi Baez. He's down to only 4,700. Really like that spot as well. Only drawing 6.6% ownership. Schwarber not getting much. I even like going down to Jason Kipnis as a wraparound option as a cheap second baseman from the left side. So really like that spot for the Cubs.
One of the games, we talked about on the strategy show this morning, potentially a game stack, the Red Sox and the Braves, just primarily because of who's on the mound for each side.
Interesting. Yeah, that's one that could definitely snap together that way. Just in thinking in terms of the pricing on these teams, you've got some quality in the middle of the Red Sox lineup and at the top of the Red Sox lineup that is at reasonably affordable prices. And you've got a struggling pitcher on the other side. And then with the Braves, you've got bats who have been among our favorites to roster all year long that are expensive, going up against just a nothing starter, 30-year-old journeyman of a guy. So yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. Game stacks are usually not my go-to move, but I think in the right spots where we're expecting a kind of a shootout and big totals on both sides, a couple of clunky pitchers, and the lineups happen to work well together, definitely. And I think we've got one of those on our hands here with the way that these teams fit. So yeah, I'd be all over that. I like the idea of Bobby Dahlbeck hitting up in an RBI spot. Kid's been on fire since coming into the league, still under 4,000 on DraftKings too. Kevin Plowecki is an interesting price for a catcher at 3,400 in the middle of the Red Sox lineup. Or you could go to Tyler Flowers at the bottom of the Braves lineup for only 3,600. So there's two interesting catcher plays, neither of which is over 5% owned in that stack. So there's a lot of interesting ways that those come together. And then, obviously the big name bats like Ozuna, Duvall, Acuna, Albies on the Braves, JD Martinez, Verdugo up at the top there. You're missing a couple of the big names for the Red Sox. It is kind of a secondary overall lineup, but I think there's enough there to work with, especially if you're looking for some discounted bats.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the things that kind of surprised me about this is, look, who knows how this is going to look when the actual ownerships come in tonight and we see, but I thought the Braves would be a little bit clearer of the top stack. I mean, they're up there. Actually, I think right now it looks like the latest update, they are the most popular projected stack, but it's not by much. I mean, Houston's up there, the Cubs are up there as well, so. It's a killer spot for the Braves. I mean, there's nothing that you should be afraid about like Mazza. I mean, everyone is kind of in play, but it's really interesting, on the other side. I mean, obviously it's a bad Red Sox lineup, but it's a really good matchup, and it's not like they don't have some power there as well. So yeah, I mean, you look at the lineup, I mean, Plowecki at catcher, definitely, in play. Dahlbeck, like you said, and Jackie Bradley Jr. I think those guys all have like a good enough, and then you can just go up to Martinez too, who's only 4,300. So, again, it's the Red Sox. They're not playing well, but you could definitely game stack this. I think you can go. If I was going to do that, I would definitely go heavier on the Red Sox. It's a little bit riskier strategy, but you save more money. You're going to be able to get a couple big bats in on the other side. And then you can either just, round it out with, another mini stack from like Dodgers or something like that, because you're going to save enough money on the Red Sox. So I like it. You can be unique if you game stack it like that as well. I definitely think both sides of this game are in play. But again, I mean, I really kind of feel like the Braves should be like the dominant stack of the night. And it's not that they're not projecting for any ownership, but again, I thought they'd be almost a little bit more popular than we have project them for. So
a team that we're not seeing kind of the middle of the pack in terms of ownership, the Yankees.
The Yanks are in a good spot again, and I think that's driven a lot by the pricing again. We're just seeing that team be very, very expensive lately. So just clicking over to them, we've got 3 guys in the lineup well over 5K, and then the rest of the lineup pretty much pushing the upper fours. So it's just kind of difficult to snap them together overall. And then, like we talked about last night, Jays, you only have one guy in the lineup, DJ LeMahieu, who has any kind of positional flexibility. So you get him at second or third base on DK, but everybody else is locked into their spots. You've got 4 outfielders in that lineup, so it makes it a little challenging to put them together the right way a lot of the time. That said, there's plenty to love about that lineup and about the matchup against Sandy Alcantara. I think every now and again, he could come out and have a decent strikeout game against this squad. But overall, I think the Yanks get to him here. Their strikeout rate is somewhat overblown. They do swing and miss a fair amount, but it's only 21.1% against righties. So that's nothing too tragic. And they draw 11.5% walks. So they generate enough opportunities. A guy like Aaron Judge, for as much as he's a free swinger, he's also a bit patient, knows how to work a walk. A guy like Aaron Hicks, his only thing that he's got working for him is that he knows how to work a count, work a walk this season. So there's some guys that are very capable of doing that and creating opportunities, setting the table for the rest of this lineup. And that happens up and down the lineup. So we can get to hitters like Judge, like Giancarlo Stanton for still a discount on Stanton. We can get to Gleyber Torres for only 4,300, hitting 7th in this lineup. Luke Voigt, 53, pricey, but still, I believe, leading the league in home runs with his 21. So just a ton of power up and down the lineup. I like Clint Frazier's bat a lot. Not Alexa. Jeez. I like Clint Frazier's bat a lot, hitting at the bottom of the lineup, and he's getting no ownership whatsoever, 4,700, but he's having a very, very nice year, earning that job finally. So I think he's sneaky as a wraparound option, going back up to the top in front of a LeMahieu, Judge, Hicks, Stanton. So a lot to do with that Yankees lineup if you can afford it and click it together in the right way.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it looks like the Marlins are actually projecting for more ownership, which I do understand, but at the same time, it's also kind of ridiculous, right? I mean, it's not like Alcantara is like an ace pitcher. I think people are scared off a little bit because he does have pretty good splits here. Not good splits, just that his splits are much better against righties. So you look up and down, obviously you look at the Yankees lineups, everyone you want to play is a right-handed batter, basically. You mentioned Hicks, I don't even know if Gardner's in the lineup tonight. So it's a dominant right-handed lineup. So I think that's probably what's going to drive the ownership down a little bit. But at the same time, like I said, the dude like pitches to contact. It's just, he just has a bit of a low home run rate, but with it's the Yankees, right? I mean, so if they're going to get their bats on the ball, I mean, anything can happen. Absolutely. I think it's a good spot. They're definitely in play. There's nothing enough against a pitcher like that would make me just say, oh, it's a good fade spot. I mean, it's not the best spot at all, but at the same time, like you're getting good ownership. You're probably going to get even a little bit of leverage against the Miami stacks, who we could talk about next. I mean, J.A. Happ obviously coming off a really good game, but I mean, he's a dude who, if he doesn't have his best stuff, I mean, he can get knocked around too. So I do kind of see the angle from that side. Again, it's always a little bit weird when the Yankees are going to go under-owned to the Marlins, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. And as a Yankees fan, I can vouch for the fact that J. Happ can get knocked around quite often. I know he's been pitching well this season. We talked about his little weird contract issue on the early bird last night, me and Jace. But yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely in a spot where he could be vulnerable to this Marlins lineup. They got a lot of righty hitters coming at him here too. So you can play the splits game all day long with this one with Starlin Marte and Jesus Aguilar and Brian Anderson, Garrett Cooper and Lewis Brinson coming back. All those right-handed hitters coming at Happ there. So definitely agree with you on that one. And just looking down the Yankees lineup, it is 8 right-handed hitters and Hicks, who hits from both sides of the plate tonight. So you're dead on as far as they're loaded with righties, and his splits are better righties. What I will say is when they do make contact, he's a pitcher who pitches to contact. When they do make contact, typically the ball flies back the other direction pretty quickly. So it just depends on whether it's going to be in the air or on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another stack that we're seeing getting some ownership, the Royals.
Interesting. I hadn't spotted that they were pulling a little ownership. Yeah, a little bit more ownership than the probability of being in the top spot there. So let's take a look. Let me click over to my model here and see if I can't track them down.
Yeah,
spot against Spencer Turnbull. I mean, they've kind of turned the corner in recent days, recent performances after they got Sal Perez back. Adalberto Mondesi's been hitting more like Adalberto Mondesi and has been running the bases a lot. So they got some of the bats back. They're in a healthier spot, and I don't really think much of Turnbull. I think we can justify that. I don't love getting to them when they're over-owned, though. There were a couple days this week where they were more sneaky and looked a little bit better. So it's not my favorite spot on the board, but I can understand why people are getting to it for sure. What Turnbull has done is limit power this year. 51 2/3 innings, just 2 home runs. He's getting a bit lucky, 4.54 xFIP to a 3.83 ERA, 50.4% ground balls, but just 5.6% soft contact. So if he leaves one up, it's going to travel for sure. Guys are getting good bat on the ball, but he's getting it done. He's sneaking by. A little bit of a dicey play against a guy who's been limiting power, limiting upside, but I can see why people are getting there.
Yeah, Turnbull's been a little bit better. I mean, he hasn't been allowing as many home runs. So, and I mean, look, the Royals aren't like, a team with a ton of power or anything. So I pretty much agree with what you said off the top, where if they're going to be over-owned, I mean, it's just kind of like a spot. And this is probably why I don't have much to say. I just haven't really thought about them much tonight. I just feel like, we just talked about the Yankees and Marlins, that Braves, Red Sox games. I get it. Like Mondesi, Franco, you could, Perez. I mean, you could do it. Absolutely. It's an okay spot, but we've already talked about like 3 spots that I think have better upside.
Yeah.
Turnbull, definitely like longer term. I get it. Longer term splits probably warrant, maybe stacking against him, but I don't know. He's been a little bit better lately, and if he's going to limit the power a little bit, I mean, I just don't think there's enough upside here. So I'm kind of against this one completely. Again, you gotta fade some spots, and with them getting ownership, it's pretty easy call for me.
Another team we haven't really talked about in terms of the hitting is the Twins, who we're seeing what their ownership is. I mean, you talked about Tyler a little bit of maybe a little sneaky play tonight, but what in terms of these Twins bats interest you?
I like this one a lot better. I mean, Molly obviously still in play. He's got good stuff, but his splits against lefties, I mean, a pretty high home run rate. So, I mean, you can go down the lineup. I mean, I think the last I looked, we had, I'll just pull it up here and give me a sec. But you had, you've Kepler leading off, and then you have Rosario in the cleanup. So you can stack that. Obviously, you don't have to leave all the righties out or anything like that. But I like getting to the Twins here. I mean, you can do like a 3-man, or you could stack them. You could even go to the bottom with like Polanco down there, and Gonzalez still has a little bit of power. So I think they're in play for sure. I haven't actually checked their updated ownership, but yeah, they're going middle of the pack. So kind of around with the Yankees, kind of in a similar spot, I think. Maybe going up against a slightly better pitcher, but in this case, the pitcher has bad splits against the some of the bats that you're going to be able to target here. So I kind of like it from that perspective. I'm always looking for to play those splits generally against if a pitcher has them pretty pronounced against one side, and it looks like you kind of do in this situation. So I like the Twins. I think if I was going to go Twins or Yankees, I'd probably lean Twins. It's close, but that's probably where I'd go tonight.
So yeah, I'm with you on the quality of the play for sure. I think I would probably, in making that decision, lean the other side, but maybe I'm a homer. But it also looks a little bit like you're getting a little favorable ownership on the Yanks end of that decision, but you're getting much better pricing on the Twins end of that decision. So it's also driven by what are you combining it with, what pitchers you're using, who's your second stack there. But yeah, I totally love the spot. I like the Mlb spot like I talked about earlier. I'll definitely have some of him. But I agree, there's home run upside for days in this Twins team. You hit the lefties on the head. You've got Kepler coming off the top, get a great mark for him in my home run model. I like Eddie Rosario in there as well, and down to Jorge Polanco hitting late. I also think that a lot of these righties are perfectly in play too. You got Josh Donaldson at only 41. Cruz is Nelson Cruz, so we don't really need to sell him despite the 5,200. 5,200 is keeping his ownership down at less than 4%. So there's a lot of advantage in that. You get to a guy like Buxton, who's been on fire all year long. Miguel Sano, just immense upside in the bat for home runs there. So I really like getting to that Twins and building with a couple different pieces of that. Mitch Garver, 4,200, 0.5% owned on DK at the catcher spot right now. Pretty sneaky. He hit, 31 home runs in 359 plate appearances last year? Sneaky spot.
We'll get one more stat question before we start getting into the listener questions for the rest of the show. Stacks that maybe we haven't really touched on. We mentioned about the pitching matchup in the Dodgers and Angels game. With the uncertainty of Kershaw, how long he could go. Maybe he goes 5 innings. But if he doesn't, is the Angels stack somewhere you go?
Interesting. I haven't really thought that one through. Let's see. Jumping over to the stacks tool. Looks like they're pretty suppressed in the stacks tool, and I imagine that's mostly because it's based on the matchup against Kershaw. So I don't have their bullpen stats in front of me, but that's a pretty good pen out in LA, just speaking anecdotally from what I've observed over the season. I know a few guys have come out. They've had some injuries that they've dealt with, but overall they've got a lot of arms to deploy out there. So I don't know that I would necessarily tangle with it. I'm not sure who would be due up after Kershaw, but not knowing for sure that Kershaw's coming out earlier or seeing anything concrete about it really other than us speculating on it, and being a little bit concerned about the quality of that bullpen and kind of the quality of that LA lineup, the Angels lineup on the other side. We like the Trouts, the Rendones of the world, but it kind of drops off a little bit there. So wouldn't really be a big target for me.
Yeah, if you're going to stack against one of the big pitchers tonight, I'm not going to play the Pirates, but it would be the White Sox, just because of the leverage you're getting against you, Darvish, in big GPPs. Kershaw's going to garner some ownership, but I don't think it's going to be crazy or anything like that. So if you're going to do something like this, I would much rather pay up for the Sox. From like Terry said, I mean, I don't have the Dodgers exact splits, but I'm pretty sure their bullpen stats are up there. They're pretty good. It's just not a lineup I really have that much interest in. If you're going to do, and again, you're looking for cheap targets. I mean, there admittedly there aren't like a ton that stick out. I mean, I think we touched on the Red Sox, which might be my kind of like favorite cheap stack. And I think there's just more upside in that Atlanta game anyways. So, the prices aren't crazy tonight either. So I'm not even sure how much, you need to save, but yeah, I think, if you're looking for like a leverage play, go to the White Sox. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you're going to do that, why go to a bad team or even a middling team? Go to one of the best offenses in baseball. If you're going to do it, pick up the leverage against the highest owned pitcher, even if it's the best one. Yeah. Just while you were talking there, just for the fun of it, I pulled up the stats. The Dodgers have the second best bullpen xFIP in the league at 3.93, and they strike out. If it clicks over fast enough, they strike out 24.1% of hitters. So that's a good bullpen.
Yeah.
Now we'll get into some questions we got. First of all, we'll go over to our premium Slack account. Fantasy Wes goes Urquidy or Brad Keller for DraftKings GPP.
That was Urquidy or Keller?
Yeah, Brad Keller.
More strikeout upside probably in Urquidy, but I think Alex has Brad Keller higher, and I think that would be he's got him really close. The ownership is also very close. That's a tough one. You're saving like 300 with Urquidy, and it's probably a better matchup against that awful Texas lineup, and a little bit more strikeout upside. So I might lean that way in that specific choice.
Yeah, I would probably lean Urquidy too. It's really close though, but Keller's up. I just don't think he has much upside. So I almost generally just go who's got the most pure upside, and for me it'd be Urquidy. So
we'll get into some questions in YouTube right now. Yankees Marlins game stack. I mean, Terry, you mentioned you don't like the way doing game stacks, but what would your take on that be?
Let me go take a look at what's in the Marlins lineup here. It's another spot where I guess we can do it. I mean, there's definitely a ton of savings in that Marlins lineup. I like Lewis Brinson for the minimum at almost no ownership, picking up in the sixth hole. He's a high-end kid with very, very good pedigree coming up here. There's a good amount of power in that bat. Nobody's going to be on him. And then you get to a couple of the righties like a Brian Anderson and Garrett Cooper. Even Corey Dickerson, I know it's lefty-lefty, but nobody's going to be touching him at 3,200, hitting seventh in that lineup. And if they do blow up Hap, you're going to get to a few bullpen at bats there. So, it's not just going to be a lefty on lefty the entire game. I could get behind that. I think I like the two stacks more individually than I like it to explode and picking the game. You're kind of zeroing your dart throw into, all right, this game on both sides is going to explode now rather than trying to find a team on each side. So it's tricky. It's not like football where a team's going to stop scoring if the other team's not scoring as much and just run the clock. Baseball doesn't work that way. So I can get behind it based on how the teams would click together, just looking at the positioning and the pricing and everything. But that would be why, rather than I think both sides are necessarily more likely than other spots to explode.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, baseball, there's no correlation necessarily, or it's a lot thinner correlation when you're game stacking. So, you have to look at it as both of each separate events. At the same time, we did talk both these stacks up, and I do kind of like them both. So you can certainly do it. I mean, if you're going to do it, I'd probably go heavier on the Marlins side. You get cheaper bats. It'll let you fit in, Judge and Hicks or something. Hicks in the third spot is easy to stack with one of the two big bats or Stanton. So definitely, I know we talked about it's the same strategy with the Red Sox and Braves. You look at both sides of that game. You like those stacks individually. You can play them individually, but if you really like them both enough, I mean, you can get pieces from both sides. I don't even call it a game stack. I just call it, you're just mixing and matching, and they just happen to like both stacks from both games. I mean, I think that's probably the better way to look at it from MLB, but if you want to put it as your game stacking, absolutely. Yeah. I think those two games are the best probably on the slate to do it. So definitely like the cheap Marlins bats, Anderson, Cooper. Yeah, you could throw, I mean, Brinson at two. I mean, it's really easy to fit in, and realistically, I think that whole lineup could go nuts if you get, bad J Hap. So.
We got a pitching question. This is a cash question. Darvish or Carrasco?
I would lean Carrasco. There's really no reason to be scared off you, Darvish, but I always lean matchups in these spots. It's close. I think, pure upside. Yeah. Darvish. And, you should be caring about upside in all formats. But for me, it's just so close here. I will take the Pirates matchup. I will take a guy who's pitching really well in Carlos Carrasco. You just don't have to worry about the White Sox. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I feel like that's the right call. Alex's projections does have, Darvish as the top pitcher, so take that into account. This is basically my call saying that I would do that in a cash game. Not anything necessarily off, something that's crazy stat projecting. It's just me saying Carrasco. So, but that is where I would go.
Yeah, and I think for cash game, you're looking for some safety there, and that's by far the safer matchup. We've talked about a number of times the White Sox being, one of the best lineups in baseball, despite Darvish's quality. They could get to him there, and you're saving by going to you're saving 400 by going to Carrasco instead in a better matchup. So,
I mean, it is
cash. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of questions about Carrasco and Darvish. I'm definitely more on the Carrasco side in that one. I like him in that spot. Christian asks, he's looking for a cheap pitcher, Kikuchi, Urquidy, or Keller. Now we don't know which Keller you're talking about because there's two of them on the slate. I'm guessing Brad would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he's bringing up Kikuchi, it might be Mitch.
Yeah, it really depends. They're all in play for me. I don't really have. I mean, they're all, even looking at Alex's board, they're all pretty much within a couple of percentage points of one another of being in the top two. Brad Keller ranks as the highest out of those guys, then Urquidy, then Mitch, then Kikuchi. But it's all relatively close, so it depends what you're looking for. You get significant ownership advantage on a guy like Kikuchi or on a guy like Mitch Keller. You might get a little bit more safety out of a guy like Brad Keller, but it limits the upside. So higher floor maybe, but lower ceiling kind of a play on Brad Keller. Or Quiddy maybe split the difference on something like that, but both of those guys are going to be higher owned. So it really depends on what we're looking for, what we're talking about, what role.
A lot of it could come down to salary too. I mean, Mitch Keller is so cheap at $6K on DK, and his ownership is going to be insanely low, I think. So I think that should factor into your decision. Are you targeting a chalky stack or something like that? Are you going to target like the Braves? You're going to save money with Keller, and you'll get low ownership. So I really think that makes a lot of sense when you're trying to mix him in. On the other side, Brad Keller is going to be probably one of the the more, I don't want to say chalky, just higher owned picks of these value dudes. So if you're okay with that, maybe you're planning to pair him with like another pitcher who's not as doesn't have as high ownership. Maybe you just don't care about ownership with your pitchers. That's fine. I mean, Keller definitely projects as probably the best sort of sub 7.5K value on DK. Urquidy, though, I think we already talked about the two. I do kind of like him a little bit more. He's got higher projected ownership, though. But I really like getting down to those 6K guys. I mean, Kikuchi, I think, is in play, but Mitch Keller, I'd still lean him, all things considered.
Of course, this is the Awesemo MLB Live Before Lock show. We'll be here till 7:10 Eastern Time, breaking down tonight's MLB slate. But do want to let you know about a great offer we have over at Awesemo.com right now. And we just added some great new tools for our NFL Express Pass users. For only $3.95, you can purchase an NFL Express Weekly Express Pass, which now includes everything you need for NFL Showdown, single game contest formats. You get access to Awesemo Showdown, single game player projections, ownership projections, and the top play tool when you purchase this pass, in addition to player rankings, lineup builder light, ownership rankings, and the top stacks express tool. You can sign up right now by just going to awesemo.com right there at the top of the page. Click on the Awesemo Plus. It'll get you that NFL Weekly Express Pass for $3.95. Great deal that Alex came up with. Alex talked about it when we did Tuesdays Live Before Lock. He wanted to come up with a package to help out those players. And as I say, if you're playing in a $5 GPP, $3.95 for get all that access to all the great tools we have. You got to take advantage of that. Jason Garnett says, sneaky stack of the day is the Indians. Agree, disagree?
Sneaky stack of the day is the Indians. Do we think they're that sneaky? They're drawing 8% ownership in relation to their 5% chance of being one of the top two. So it looks like the public's getting to them a little bit. I don't dislike the spot. We've talked about that lineup all year long, but they're kind of struggling. They're not really as good as we expected them to be overall. So just pulling up their team splits, for example, if I can get to it, they have a They're 27th in baseball against righties with a 141 ISO, 85 WRC plus this year, 23.6% strikeout rate. So there's some strikeouts there, but it's Keller, Mitch Keller. So it's the roller coaster Keller. Last time out, he had a no hitter going through 6. They pulled him after like 85 pitches because his pitch count was getting up. He is down to he's getting 4.19 xFIP on his 6.12 ERA this year. So he's gotten a little unlucky with his pitching. 10 home runs allowed, 26.6% strikeout rate. So he strikes out a lot of guys. They're striking out too much. They're not generating a lot of power. He's not really giving up a tremendous amount of power. So I don't know. I'm not sure how sneaky that is. I'll have some, but I'm not sure if it's the sneaky spot of the day.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with Keller, right? Like you said, he's not giving up a ton of power. So even if he gets in trouble and he's not pitching well, I'm not sure if there's like a ton of upside for the Indians bats. I mean, look, there is upside because there obviously there's a ton of great hitters in the lineup, but just from like you said, I mean, those splits are great. I didn't actually look up their righty power numbers or anything like that today. So, I mean, that just makes me more comfortable in the call though. So definitely, a place with them getting up to 8% ownership. I'm okay fading. I don't know, maybe go with like a mini stack just because Ramirez is doing so well. But yeah, I mean, they haven't been.
Yeah, and they're good. Again, I think I even wrote them up in one of the columns. So, I mean, it is a good spot overall against this pitcher who has been up and down and we've seen is not necessarily fully developed yet. And the top of that lineup, they've got the 4 switch hitters up there going right into a Franmil Reyes. There's plenty of quality if you go back over time, Jose Ramirez and Francisco Lindor and those different guys, even Cesar Hernandez coming off the top. So there's plenty to do with that lineup. I'm not bashing the stack by any means. I think they're in play. I just don't know that they're the sneakiest thing in the world, and I don't know that they're going to be the most explosive stack. Yeah. I think they are in play.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, if Keller is bad and he gets pulled quick, I mean, you got the Pirates bullpen to work over. So
very good point.
Maybe the upside is definitely there. It's just it's a good team, but it's still not my favorite spot of the night. And maybe I'm just trusting Mitch Keller too much. But if he does come with a good game, I don't think I think Cleveland probably isn't going to pay off too much tonight. So.
We got another Cleveland question, and it was asking about whether you like one bat over the other, Santana or Reyes.
Let's see what the home run model has to say about that. Franmil's getting the bigger number in my home run model. Santana is more popular, costs less. Also a very nice home run model. I would lean Franmil on that one, just based on the ownership.
I don't have a hard take either way. Yeah, I agree. Just go with the ownership. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, overall, Franmil's having a little bit of a stronger season. 277, 345, 446 / 168 ISO, 111 WRC plus. Santana is at 193, 344, 325 with an 88 WRC plus. Go with the guy having a better year.
Someone asked who your favorite pitcher on FanDuel is tonight.
My favorite pitcher is probably Mitch Keller. I just love that kid. But the guy who's probably going to have the best game is probably you, Darvish. If not him, it's probably Carlos Carrasco. Both of those guys drawing a significant amount of ownership, though. I think Berrios could be sneaky, like we talked about earlier. Not a lot of people going to him, and you're paying down a little bit at 9,200 off that top tier. And then maybe like a Tyler Mahle, who I've mentioned a couple times that I like. I think Geoff is more on the other side of that, and would both like the bats on the other side of that one. But he's not drawing very much ownership at all. So any one of those guys I can get to on FanDuel.
Yeah, I definitely still like Keller on FanDuel. It's a risky spot, obviously, single pitcher and stuff like that. But at 63, so cheap there compared to everyone else. I do kind of think he's in play. Overall, I mean, you get the same savings, Carrasco over Darvish. So, it's kind of similar. Darvish exactly, still projects out. Urquidy is actually really cheap there. That's probably the one thing I'd say. He's a little bit cheaper, I think, comparatively. Ownership isn't crazy or anything. So maybe just from a pure value perspective, Urquidy, a guy who's good, who's getting respect tonight, but maybe just isn't getting enough. I mean, it's a really good matchup too. So FanDuel, that definitely kind of sticks out to me as well.
That's a great call, actually. Yeah, he skipped my attention. I'm actually going to throw him into a little mini crunch right now. Good call.
We got a pitching question about whether you prefer one pitcher over other. Paddock, a 7-inning game. Maybe he can go all 7 innings, or J.A. Happ. I feel like we should go to Terry since you are the the Yankee homer here.
Let Terry handle Hap because I don't really have a good take either way.
Yeah, I mean, Hap has been pitching well. I'm just pulling up Paddock's game log real quick here. So Paddock has gone 6 innings 3 times this year. He went 6 his last time out against Seattle, but before that he went 2. He went 4 2/3. He's got a couple 5s, a couple 3s in there. So he hasn't gone 7 this entire year. So we're relying on something that he hasn't done to squeeze out that extra upside. And he's not been exactly fantastic this year either. You know, he's given up some runs. So while I don't love J Happ, that might be against probably a worse lineup. I think that might be your play out of those two guys. Happ 4.18 xFIP this year, 3.25 ERA, pitching pretty well, 22.4% strikeout rate, up from his career 20.9. Ground balls are up to 43%, so it's up a little bit over the last 2 years. Hard contact is down, swinging strikes are up. Marlins, they're frisky. They're all the way up actually to 7th in baseball with a 196 ISO in the split and a 121 WRC plus. So it is a challenging spot for them. But I don't know that we're buying any complete game upside there with Paddock.
Yeah, I mean, Hap was good, is really good as last time out. It's just you don't know what you're going to get. I just don't have like a solid take with him. I mean, the upside is there. I mean, maybe again, maybe you should just be playing that and just assuming like he comes out. It's still the Marlins is going up against. So, but there's some tough spots for him to get around tonight. So again, it's a spot I would rather attack with the bats than go with the pitching. So I guess my answer, if you're taking those two, is Paddock, but I'm not really in love with Paddock either. I mean, look, his K upside, like for a pitcher who's almost 9K, it's not really good. I think if I was in a GPP, I'd rather get up to Berrios on DraftKings for sure. Terry talked about him, and I agree. Like, I think that's a better spot. But, you're talking Hap or Paddock. I mean, I'll just take Paddock. I almost feel like Heaney might be a better play than both those guys in GPPs. I guess I just don't really love this range. I mean, it's kind of a dead range for me. I like the value getting in the 7K, and obviously I like the top 3 guys, and I kind of like Berrios too. So the top 4 guys. So this whole range for me is just kind of, I mean, I don't really have a hard take here. I'm kind of good fading all these guys.
I want to mention a question we got over in Slack. The person sent the question for me, so I'll give my thoughts, but also get your guys' thoughts. Kyle says he just started watching us on YouTube. He sees the stack tool that we have over at Awesemo.com, and what our thoughts were our top stacks tonight on FanDuel. As I was developing lineups right here on the show, Cubs, Braves were my top 2 stacks.
I like that call. I'm actually in the process of saving something. So, Geoff, if you can give your stops.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, go ahead. I mean, look, I talked about the Braves. I thought they should have been higher owned, projected to be higher owned than they would, or at least I thought they would be higher owned than they would. I think people are just sleeping on it. It's a great matchup against Mazda. So Braves definitely like projecting just my favorite stack in general, whatever, just looking at it, subjectively from my own opinion or whatever, but the stats bear it out too. And then, again, going down, there's a lot of interesting teams that could definitely come out and play well and just, aren't in like smash spots, but they're like the Yankees. They're the Yankees, and the Cubs. Yeah, the wind's blowing in, but it's still the Cubs against like a pretty good pitching matchup. The one I like the most though is the Twins. Again, I like looking for those splits. I think Tyler Mahle has really good splits to attack with the left-handed pitching or left-handed hitting hitters of the Twins. So I like attacking that, and you can mix in 1 or 2 of the right-handed power hitters as well. So I think there's different ways to go about that. I think the Twins aren't going to be like uber popular. They're definitely not projecting to be kind of like half the ownership right now of the Braves. So that would kind of be my second one there. I think definitely don't mind mixing in Dodgers as well, but I'll give the Twins as my second.
I like that. Just looking at what I'm getting to in Fantasy Cruncher as I'm sorting through it here real quick. Kind of echoing that. I'll throw the Yankees in there. So my top teams stacks-wise on FanDuel, 4-player stacks, Yankees, Braves, Twins. I am getting to a little bit of KC who popped up. I'm getting to a fair amount of Cleveland who we talked about. Getting to some Oakland that we didn't really talk too much about, but I think it's a reasonable matchup out there. A little bit of White Sox mixed in. We talked about what to do with potentially weaponizing that as a play against the Darvish ownership. So I'm doing a little bit of that. Those are really the top teams. And then on the pitching side of things, heavy Carrasco, Darvish, Keller, Urquidy, Kershaw, basically the guys we talked about. Some Molly in there. So I'm basically in line. I'm riding everything we talked about, guys.
Of course, we got just about 350 people watching us live right now on YouTube. Be sure to smash that like button. That really does help us out. Of course, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We got shows all weekend long getting you ready for the NFL slate on Sunday. Also, tomorrow we've got the NASCAR show. We got MMA show. On the contrary, there's a ton of shows tomorrow here on Awesemo.com, so you got to check us out. Of course, if you do have any questions about tonight's games, be sure to hit those up in YouTube or in Slack as well. Kind of looking at some other questions in terms of
just crank my upload in here and then I can throw
yeah. Also got to mention
something like that if we get to...
MLB ownership projections are free today on the site, so you got to check that out over there as you're helping developing your lineup. We kind of talked about some of our takes earlier today. Just looking, we actually just got an ownership update a couple of minutes ago. Carlos Carrasco now has topped over Yu Darvish as the top pitcher in terms of ownership. Chris Bassett is getting up there as well. John Birdie for the Marlins is up there as well as a cheap bat at 2,400.
There you go. Yeah, and there's some Marlins popping in the home run model too. I was just taking a peek, switching over to that. Throw out a couple cheap home runs. I think people like getting those toward the end here. So I've got under let's say like 4,000 on DK. I've got Jesus Aguilar near the top of the board here at 31. Carlos Santana is at 4,000. He's pulling a pretty good number. We just talked about him a minute ago. Joey Gallo only 4,000. Chris Bryant 38. I'm not sure if he's in the lineup actually. Brian Anderson from the Marlins 39. Corey Dickerson also of the Marlins 32. A lot of Marlins popping on this home run board, guys. Might be cramming some last minute Marlin stacks. Gary Sanchez only 2,900 on FanDuel, getting a good price on a good home run mark on him. Some of those Cubbies bats also, Wilson Contreras, Ian Happ, not sure of the lineup status on those guys. Mentioned Gleyber Torres at one point during the show. He's 43. That's a little bit of a cheat on DK, but good home run mark on him. Very good projection, top end shortstop. So a lot of the Yankees, the more expensive Yankees up toward the top of the board. A lot of more expensive Indians up toward the top of the board mysteriously as well. So interesting spot.
I know we also got a lot of questions about Lamet. He's not pitching game 1, which is on the DK slate, so that's Chris Paddock's going to be going in there. That's why you're seeing the ownership of what it is there, so something just kind of to note there. Daryl says, is Kikuchi in trouble versus the A's?
I kind of think he is. I mean, I don't really think it's a great spot. I mean, he's got lots of, tough right-handed hitters to go up against. The control hasn't been good. He's good pitcher. I know he's improved a little bit and the velocity, whatever you want to say, but the walks are still giving him problems. And I think it's a tough matchup. Actually, we didn't really talk about the A's much, but I think there's definitely some interesting hitters you could target there, mainly with the righties with Simon, Canna. You could throw in like a lefty as well, but Chris Davis is an interesting just righty, just pure power hitter. So, and again, you get to Kikuchi early. I mean, then you get the Seattle bullpen. So I'm not really. Again, I'd rather go down to Keller tonight. I've talked about Kikuchi. I mean, I definitely like him as a pitcher. I think he's been on every Friday slate thus far, but I don't think this is a good matchup for him at all.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. A's are versus lefties, 203 ISO, 111 WRC plus, only strike out 20% of the time. So they're very good. You mentioned the righty hitters in that lineup. Tough spot for him. He's improved dramatically. He limits hard contact, but it could just be one of those games where they might not blow him up, but he might not have a good game. It's just one of those kind of middling ones that you don't want for DFS.
We got a question, a Yahoo question, Aiden saying, thoughts on Adam Duvall and Yahoo at low ownership?
Adam Duvall, anywhere you can get him at low ownership, fire away.
Quick and to the point.
Yeah.
I like it.
He's going to be a low ownership.
He's raking this year. He's an explosive upside for the spot. Yeah, not much to say. Go for it.
I had to make sure, but yeah, he is bad tonight. So yeah,
unless he's on the bench, yeah, play him at a good price.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Someone actually mentioned about Luke Voigt's ownership. Apparently, it's really low. I wanted to just check that out for top of my list. Yeah, man, his ownership's low, but obviously you got to pay up to get him. And Terry, obviously you're the home run guy. What's your take on him as a home run hitter tonight?
Yeah, pretty good number. Not the biggest one on the board for the Yankees. Surprisingly, he's one of the better home run hitters on the team right now. I believe 21 overall on the year. I think he's well over 50 since joining the team. Just immense upside that was unexpected from this hitter. Certainly welcome. I was resenting him stealing Greg Bird's job for a long time. I like my first baseman left-handed in Yankee Stadium, but Voigt's won me over, man. He just absolutely crushes. So, yeah, if you can get to him, if you have the money to get to him at low ownership, and I think he's only going like 2-3% owned tonight, absolutely fire away. Like him better as a part of Yankee stacks than just as a one-off, but I think you can use him in either capacity.
Yeah, I don't think any Yankees bats are really going super owned. I mean, that I saw, but so yeah, I mean, obviously.
Yeah, they were in a very good spot on the board for Alex in terms of being high ranked and low ownership share. So
yeah,
they were in a good spot for me. I think I got to a lot of them. I don't exactly know what's in the crunch that I entered, but hopefully I sorted it the right way. We'll see.
As I look over at our YouTube chat, EMAC in the chat, asking if there's an MMA show this week. Yeah, we'll be on tomorrow, 6 p.m. Myself and Pete will get you ready for the UFC pay-per-view tomorrow night. They've got a $50K to first place on DraftKings. So, yeah, we will be a part of tomorrow's coverage here at Awesemo.com. As we're just come up here on 7:10 each time as we wrap up this edition of MLB Live Before Lock. You know, Terry, you were mentioning about doing some crunches. What was coming up in your crunches as we get closer here to all these games?
Yeah, so I went through some of the stacks that I was getting to, and then just looking down some of the second tier pitchers. This is a FanDuel crunch. I did get to a little bit Kikuchi on the one pitcher side. I got to a little of the sneaky Heaney. I got to some Urquidy of what I threw into that last minute crunch there. Fantasy Cruncher just unfroze for me, so I can talk about it a little bit more sensibly now. Looks like just examining some of the combinations, working with some Keller, I did get to some expensive combinations with like Yankees and Dodgers, Yankees and Braves, Braves and Dodgers, Minnesota in there with all of those teams as well. So Geoff mentioned it. Using Mitch Keller at that super low price on FanDuel opened up a lot of different things that you can do. I've got a fair amount coming back with the White Sox against Darvish. Paired with some of those pricier teams too. So if one of those happens to go off and they have to get to Darvish, I've got a fair amount of leverage on the whole field because not a lot of people are doing that. So that's the idea there. It's trying to thread a very, very specific needle with a, bumpy pitcher and, going up against some very high end pitching, but that's the overall concept. And it's kind of exactly what Geoff was speaking to throughout the show.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to say something there, Geoff. That looked like you were going to say something. And then,
he was like a satisfied look. He's like, yeah, damn right I was. That's right.
I agree.
Yeah. It's, as I mentioned, I like the Cubs. I like the Braves tonight. Got to the Yankees as well. It's, as we always talk about, it just comes down to price point. The Cubs, the pricing on the Cubs made that really easy stack to get to. That was why I just found myself going to them a lot just because of the price point of based on the pitchers that I was looking to get in my lineups.
Cubs are in a good matchup. I mean, that's for sure. Definitely. I know we talked about it a bit at the start. I mean, Cease with the just control issues, not like a high K pitcher. And again, yeah, the wind's blowing in, but I mean, they may not need to hit the ball out of the park to go nuts here. So. I definitely do not mind that. And again, it's like you said, they're just easy to get in. I mean, the prices on most of these guys are ridiculous. So I can definitely understand that. And with the expensive pitchers on the slate, it does feel like a lot of people want to pay up for both studs or two of the three studs, which I think is a smart play. Definitely can see why they like them. Again, the win thing is what it is. It's sometimes it's like the big deal, and sometimes it's not. So,
well, fellas, we have reached locked here on Friday night. As always, great talking with you. Of course, the last Friday night of the regular season. So, of course, keep it locked here at Awesemo.com all weekend long to have you coverage for all of this week's baseball action. So that's going to do it for this edition of MLB Live Before Lock right here at Awesemo.com.